I realized my mother had rewritten my grandmother's last wishes the day of the will reading, sitting in a leather chair that squeaked every time I moved. When the lawyer said the phrase, "And to my beloved granddaughter, Megan, I leave the blue china teapot she has always admired," and I felt my blood run cold because that exact sentence was something I had said out loud to my grandma as a joke while we were watching Home Shopping TV, word for word, 2 years earlier, and my grandmother had laughed and said, "You can have the whole house, honey, not just the teapot." So hearing only the teapot told me something had gone very, very wrong. I was 32, my grandma had been in the ground for exactly 6 days, and I was still in that foggy half-grief, half-exhaustion place you fall into after you've spent a year of your life doing hospice at home, waking up every night to medication alarms, arguing with insurance companies, learning to lift a grown woman without breaking your own back. My mother looked like a portrait of dignified sorrow in her black dress and pearls, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. My Uncle Ray sat beside her, big and red-faced from crying or whiskey or both. My older brother, Tyler, leaned against the wall in a suit he only ever wore to weddings and funerals, scrolling his phone in a way he thought was subtle. I sat closest to the lawyer because technically I was the one named as Grandma's healthcare proxy, the one who'd been signing most of the forms and talking to doctors, but in our family that never translated to actually having a say about money because money was my mother's religion. "As you all know," the lawyer said in that soothing tone lawyers use when they're about to drop a bomb, "Mrs. Callahan executed a will in 2014, which we are here to read." "She had one before that," I blurted before I could stop myself. "From when I was a kid." I remembered it vividly because when I was 12 my grandma had sat me down at her kitchen table, poured us both iced tea in jelly jars and said, "You're my executor now, Meg. That's a big word. It means you'll be in charge when I'm gone, because you're the only one I trust to do what I really want, not what looks best." She'd shown me the papers. My name right there. She'd tapped the line where she'd written in her shaky hand that her house was to go to me, and the remaining savings to be split between my mom and Uncle Ray. "I don't have much," she'd said, "but I want you to have a place that's yours. No matter what happens with your mama and your brother and all their drama, you'll have this." My mother had found out and lost her mind. "You don't put that burden on a child," she'd scolded my grandmother later, when she thought I was out of earshot. "Making her executor? Giving her the house? That's not right. She'll be an adult someday," Grandma had said, "and you'll still be you." "What's that supposed to mean?" Mom had snapped. I'd crept back to my room, clutching the idea of my house like a secret talisman. It had gotten me through a lot of fights over the years. Every time my mother threatened to throw me out for speaking up, every time she reminded me that my room was her house, her rules, I'd think of Grandma's words, "You'll have this." So hearing 2014 instead of "the will we updated when you were 12, put a pit in my stomach big enough to swallow me. She revised her estate plan several times over the years, the lawyer said now, shuffling papers. "This is the most recent version on file." "As is her right," my mother said pointedly, shooting me a look. "You know how your grandmother hated loose ends. She wanted everything in order." "Go on," Uncle Ray grunted, like he was trying to get a particularly stubborn lawnmower started. The lawyer read the usual legalese that makes death sound like a paperwork glitch. Bequests to the church, small gifts to various cousins and charities, the kind of thing that made my grandma feel generous even when she didn't have much. Then came the big stuff. "To my son, Raymond," the lawyer read, "I leave the balance of my checking and savings accounts, my car, and all remaining personal property not otherwise specified." Uncle Ray nodded solemnly like a man accepting a medal, even though I knew he'd already been borrowing money from those accounts for years with my mother's help. "To my daughter, Catherine," the lawyer continued, "I leave my residence at 412 Willow Street free and clear, together with all contents and associated property." My mother started crying harder at that, but they were the kind of tears that didn't mess up her makeup. She squeezed my hand with one of hers and clutched her pearls with the other. "I told her I didn't need anything," she sobbed. "I told her it should go to the kids. She wouldn't hear of it. That was a lie. I'd heard the fights. I'd heard her tell Grandma over and over that it's only fair the house comes back to us after everything we put into it, conveniently forgetting that we had meant my grandmother working 2 jobs and my grandfather, who died when I was 6, paying that mortgage off decade by decade. Then came my turn. And to my beloved granddaughter Megan, the lawyer read, I leave the blue china teapot she has always admired, in the hope that she will remember our shared cups of tea and know how much I loved our time together. The room spun. The teapot. The stupid teapot with the crack in the handle that we both pretended wasn't there. I heard my own voice in my head from that afternoon on the couch years ago, telling Grandma that all I wanted when she died was that old blue teapot, so I can make tea and feel like you're still nagging me to drink something warm. We'd laughed. She'd patted my knee. You can have the whole house, baby, she'd said. Teapot and all. I'll put it in writing. Is that it? I asked now, my voice sounding small even to me. The lawyer cleared his throat. That is the extent of the specific bequests, he said. Your grandmother expressed great love for each of you. Something in me cracked. Did she say why she changed her mind? I asked. About the house? Megan, my mother hissed, that warning tone that had frozen me since childhood. This is not the time. She signed this will in my office, the lawyer said carefully. She was of sound mind. She said she wanted to simplify things. Simplify, I repeated, staring at the paper. By giving everything to you too and leaving me a cracked teapot? My mother stiffened. You are not entitled to anything, she snapped, grief mask slipping just enough for the real Catherine to peek through. Your grandmother didn't owe you a house, Megan. She owed you nothing. She chose to leave it to me. Maybe if you'd been around more. If I'd been around more. I choked. I moved in for 6 months to take care of her when you said you couldn't handle the smell. I was the one changing her, bathing her, feeding her when she forgot how to hold a fork. You came over twice a week with flowers and left after 20 minutes because it was too hard. Uncle Ray made a noise somewhere between a cough and a laugh. You watch your tone, he said. Your mama did what she could. You young people think wiping a few butts makes you martyrs. Ray, the lawyer warned, but the damage was done. I stood up so fast the chair creaked. I need some air, I said before I said something I couldn't unsay. I left the office, walked straight past the water cooler, out onto the sidewalk, and kept going until I hit the end of the block. My phone buzzed. Ethan. He'd stayed home with our toddler because we thought this would be a simple reading, and because my mother had insisted, it's just family business. Not inviting him was my first mistake. How bad is it? He asked when I answered. I laughed, a choked, strangled sound. I got a teapot, I said. They got the house, the cash, the car, everything. I got a teapot I bought for her at Goodwill when I was 19. There was a pause. You're kidding, he said. I wish I was. What about the old will? He asked. The one where she left you the house? Apparently she changed it in 2014, I said. In that one, my mother gets the house. I get sentimental crockery. Ethan swore softly. Do you think your mom pressured her? He asked. I looked back through the glass doors at my mother, who was now laughing at something Uncle Ray had said. Grief toggled off like a switch. Do I think the woman who guilt her own mother into co-signing a loan for a kitchen remodel, then called it God's blessing, pressured her? I said. Yes, I think she did. Then you need to find out what really happened, he said, before you decide whether to let this go. Letting things go had been my specialty for 32 years. Let my brother take Grandma's old car, because he has a family to support, while I rode the bus. Let my mom dip into the college fund Grandma saved for me, for emergencies, that seemed to look a lot like her credit card bills. Let Uncle Ray live in the rental house rent-free, until he gets back on his feet, which never seemed to happen. Let it go when my mom referred to Grandma's place as our house for years before the woman was even in hospice. Let until there was nothing left. Back at the lawyer's office, my mother took my arm on the way out, nails digging in through my black blouse. "Don't you dare make a scene," she hissed. "Grandma just died. You should be ashamed of yourself bringing up money." "I didn't bring it up," I said. "That was the entire purpose of the meeting." "She chose," my mother said. "If you loved her, you'll respect that." That night, after the post-funeral casserole delivery line had finally died down and my mother had gone home to rest, I stayed at Grandma's house alone. The hospice bed was still in the living room, a floral comforter thrown over it to hide the metal rails, like that made it less obviously a deathbed. The air still smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender lotion. I went into her bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and let myself cry properly for the first time since she passed. Not the polite tears of the funeral, but deep, ugly sobs for everything, for her, for the house, for the way my mother had managed to reach from beyond the grave and rearrange my grandmother's legacy to suit herself. When I finally ran out of tears, I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweater and started to do what my grandma had always trained me to do when life felt impossible. I cleaned. I went through drawers, sorted clothes, made piles for charity. In the process, I found things I wasn't supposed to see. First, it was the shoebox at the back of her closet, labeled old papers in my grandma's cramped handwriting. Inside, under a stack of yellowed recipes and Christmas cards, was a manila envelope with the law firm's logo from 15 years ago. I slid the papers out. There, in black and white, was the will I remembered, the one from when I was 12. My name as executor. The house explicitly to me. A little handwritten note in the margin. "Talk to Meg about this again when she's older. She takes things on her shoulders." I sat on the floor, the carpet imprinting patterns on my legs, and compared it to the copy of the 2014 will I'd requested a few hours earlier by email. The language was entirely different. The structure, the witnesses, even the signature looked slightly off, like someone had guided her hand. I couldn't prove that just from a piece of paper, but my gut twisted. Deeper in the shoebox was a folded letter with my name on it. "Meg," it said on the front in my grandmother's shaky script. The date in the corner was from 2015, about a year after the new will was signed. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Meg," it began, "if you're reading this, I guess I'm gone and your mother finally let you go through my things." That line alone told me a lot. Grandma had known my mother would control access even to her dead body's leftovers. "I need you to know some things," the letter went on. "Your mama and Ray were very upset about my old will. They said it wasn't fair to make you responsible for everything. They said people would think I was playing favorites. They said if I left the house to you, it would drive a wedge between you and them. I told them I trusted you. They told me I was being manipulated by a child. We had some bad fights about it. You probably heard." I remembered closed doors, muffled voices, my name said in angry tones. "One day they took me to Mr. Garrison's office to update my paperwork," she wrote. "I was tired. I'd had a bad spell with my heart. I didn't read everything like I should. Your mama kept saying, 'We'll keep the house in the family, don't you worry.' I thought that meant you. Later, when I asked for a copy, she said it was all fine, no need to upset myself reading legal mumbo-jumbo. I let it go. That was my mistake. I am telling you now, I wanted you to have this house. I still do. If that's not what the papers say, then someone changed more than my mind." At the bottom, her handwriting slanted more. "There's also a little video thingy," she added. "Your cousin showed me how to use that camera you got me. I don't know if it will help, but I said my piece just in case. It's in the sugar canister. Don't laugh, that's where I hide everything." I laughed anyway, a choke sound. Of course, the sugar canister. That ugly ceramic rooster had been on her counter my whole life. No one ever looked inside it because it was chipped. I went back to the kitchen, lifted the lid, and there it was. A cheap little USB stick in a snack-sized baggie. My heart was pounding by the time I got back to the living room and plugged it into my laptop. The video was grainy, the angle crooked, my grandma slightly off-center on her floral couch. She was wearing her favorite cardigan, the one with the missing button she never bothered to fix. "Is it on?" she asked, looking slightly above the camera. Off-screen, my cousin's voice told her yes. Okay, she said, looking straight into the lens. Meg, honey, if you're watching this, I need you to listen to me and not your mama. She took a deep breath. I am not crazy, she said. I know they keep saying I get confused. I get tired, sure. I forget where I put my glasses, but I know what I own and who I want to have it. I want you to have this house. You are the one who has taken care of me. You are the one who shows up. Your mama has done some, Ray has done some, but you are the one I trust to keep this place from falling apart or being sold off for beer money. She gave a little snort at that, then sobered. Your mama and Ray talked me into changing my will, she said. They said it would be easier. They said you'd get your share later. But knowing those two, I wouldn't bet my dentures on it. If you want to fight it, I give you my blessing. I'm sorry to put you in that position. I never wanted my death to be one more burden on you. But if I don't say this somewhere, your mama will act like she knows what I wanted better than I do. She leaned closer, her wrinkled face filling the frame. Do what you have to do, baby, she said. If that means you let it go and walk away, you have my blessing. If it means you stand up in court and say, Grandma said, you have my blessing. Just remember, I loved you. This house is just wood and brick. It doesn't love you back. I do. The video stopped. I sat there in the dark, the laptop screen the only light, and felt a mix of rage and heartbreak so intense it left me shaking. My mother hadn't just convinced my grandmother to change her will. She'd also tried to control the narrative of what Grandma wanted even from beyond the grave. And my grandmother, who had spent her entire life smoothing over other people's messes, had left me a mess of my own. A choice between keeping the peace and honoring her actual wishes. When I showed the letter and video to Ethan, he was quiet for a long time. You know this is dynamite, right? He said. If you take this to a lawyer, it's going to blow your family up. They already blew it up, I said. I'm just standing in the rubble. I met with my own attorney the next week, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. I showed her the old will, the new will, the letter, the video. She watched my grandmother's recorded plea twice, expression unreadable. Can we do anything? I asked. Or am I just stuck? We can contest the will, she said. Argue undue influence, lack of informed consent, possible fraud if there's evidence someone misrepresented the contents. The old will shows intent. The letter and video show intent. The fact that the primary beneficiaries of the changes are the people who brought her to the lawyer and controlled her access to the documents is not great for them. What are my chances? I asked. She gave the lawyer version of a shrug. Contesting a will is always an uphill battle, she said. Judges don't like to second-guess the dead. But I've seen weaker cases win. It will be ugly. Your family will say awful things about you. They'll call you greedy. They'll say you're exploiting a confused old woman. You have to decide if you're ready for that. I thought about my mother telling me to respect Grandma's wishes, when she was really telling me to respect her own. I thought about all the nights I'd spent in that house, listening to my grandmother struggle to breathe, giving her morphine, telling her it was okay to go. I thought about the way she'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't let them steamroll you, honey." "Let's do it," I said. My grandma told me to stand up in court if I had to. I think she knew this was coming. Telling my mother was a scene. "You are what's wrong with this generation." She spat over the phone when she got the notice of contest. "No respect. No gratitude. Your grandmother left me her house, and you're trying to snatch it out of my hands before the body's cold." "Her body is literally cold," I said. "We buried her last week, and she left me a letter and a video saying she wanted me to have the house, but you talked her into changing it." She was confused, my mother screamed. She didn't know what she was saying. "She was less confused than you think," I said. "She knew exactly who she was dealing with." "You ungrateful little," she started, then cut herself off. "Fine. You want to drag your family name through the mud? Go ahead. Just know you're killing me. After everything I've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me. You sacrificed for Grandma too, I said. I'm not saying you didn't, but you don't get to rewrite history and pretend you were the only one there. Uncle Ray called me a few days later to add his 2 cents. You always were a selfish little princess, he slurred. Grandma lets you think you're special, and now you're trying to steal our legacy. Your legacy? I asked. You mean the house you haven't paid a dime toward in 20 years? The one you wanted to sell to pay off your gambling debt? You're not entitled to anything, he said. Your mama's the oldest. It should go to her. That's how it works. That's not how wills work, I said. That's how entitlement works. The court battle dragged on for almost a year. There were depositions where my mother swore up and down that Grandma was confused when she wrote the letter but clear-headed when she signed the 2014 will. There were cousins who testified that Grandma always said the house would go to Kathy someday, conveniently forgetting the time she'd told me otherwise, because people remember what benefits them. There were medical records showing my grandmother's cognitive assessments, mostly intact with occasional mild impairment, nothing like the dementia my mother tried to paint. There was the handwriting expert who testified that the signature on the 2014 will showed signs of external pressure on the pen, which could be physical assistance or could be nothing, depending on who you believed. The turning point, though, was the video. My lawyer fought to get it admitted. My mother's lawyer fought just as hard to exclude it. In the end, the judge allowed it as evidence of intent, with the caveat that he'd weigh its credibility. Sitting in that courtroom, watching my grandmother's face flicker to life on the little screen, hearing her voice say, "I am not crazy. I want you to have this house," broke something open in me that I hadn't even realized was still locked. My mother sobbed in the back row. Whether from grief or fury, I couldn't tell. Uncle Ray muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. When the video ended, the judge looked at my mother. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "your mother seems quite clear here about her wishes." "She didn't know what she was saying," my mother insisted. "She forgets. She says things to make everyone happy. She didn't mean it. She recorded that in private," my lawyer pointed out. "To a granddaughter you say she was afraid of upsetting. That doesn't sound like performance." In the end, the judge didn't do anything dramatic like throwing out the 2014 will entirely. That's not how courts work outside of TV. What he did do was rule that there was sufficient evidence of undue influence to invalidate the specific clause giving the house solely to my mother. That kicked the house into intestacy, legal limbo, which, combined with the older will and some very complicated state laws, gave me a claim as an heir that was hard to push aside. My mother's lawyer recommended a settlement to avoid a full-blown trial that could potentially expose more of her and Ray's creative financial behavior with Grandma's accounts. In the end, the deal was this. The house would be signed over to me, free and clear, on the condition that I pay my mother a set amount over 5 years, essentially buying out part of her interest. Uncle Ray got his share from the remaining savings and the eventual sale of Grandma's car. It wasn't the clean victory some people might imagine. I didn't win the house for free. I took on another debt, one I could technically have fought, but my lawyer advised me that judges like compromise, and I was exhausted. Standing in that same lawyer's office months later, signing the deed transfer, keys heavy in my pocket, my mother glared at me like I was stealing her birthright. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You tore this family apart for a pile of bricks." I looked at her, really looked at her, at the lines carved deeper by anger than age, at the way she always framed herself as the victim even when the evidence said otherwise. "You did that when you decided your pride mattered more than Grandma's word," I said. "I'm just trying to live in the mess." We haven't spoken much since. She came to the house once early on to see what you've done to my mother's home. She walked through the rooms, critical eyes taking in the fresh paint, the sanded floors, the framed photo of Grandma on the mantel. "She'd hate those curtains," she sniffed. "She picked them," I said. "They were in her linen closet." I just finally hung them up like she wanted. She hasn't been back. Tyler, my brother, took my mother's side. You made her relive every mistake she ever made, he told me. For what? A mortgage-free house? You could have just let Mom have this one thing. It wasn't one thing, I said. It was the culmination of a lifetime of her taking from Grandma and calling it sacrifice. We all take, he said. That's family. I didn't have an answer for that he'd accept. Now, 3 years later, I live in my grandmother's house. My daughter learned to walk on these floors. I drink tea from the blue china teapot in the kitchen, and sometimes, when the light hits the cracked handle just right, I can hear my grandma's laugh like she's still here. The neighborhood has changed. Some of the old ladies from church still side-eye me when I'm in the yard. I hear the whispers. That's Kathy's girl, the one who sued her own mama. My mother still tells anyone who will listen that I stole her inheritance, that I twisted her dying mother's words. She leaves voicemails sometimes late at night after a couple glasses of wine. I hope that house keeps you warm when you're old and alone, she'll say. Because your daddy's gone, your brother barely speaks to you, and when I'm dead, you'll have no one left. I delete them without responding. Not because they don't hurt, but because I've realized something. I'd rather be alone in a house where the walls hold memories of someone who actually loved me than packed into a room full of people who see me as an extension of their bank account. Still, sometimes when I'm sitting on the back porch where Grandma used to shell peas, watching my daughter play in the yard, the guilt creeps in. I see my mother in her little rental apartment across town, complaining to her friends about her ungrateful daughter, and I wonder if I should have just let it go. Maybe I could have walked away with my teapot and my memories and a slightly cleaner conscience, even if it meant letting my mother's version of Grandma's wishes stand unchallenged. But then I remember my grandmother's face on that grainy video, eyes clear, voice firm, saying, "If that's not what the papers say, then someone changed more than my mind. If you want to fight it, you have my blessing." She gave me her blessing to walk away too, I know that. She said the house is just wood and brick. But she also knew me well enough to know that if she didn't leave some evidence, I'd always wonder if I'd failed her by staying quiet. So that's where I'm stuck, internet strangers. I am the granddaughter who contested her grandmother's will and ended up with the house but lost whatever fragile relationship she still had with her mother and brother in the process. My family thinks I'm greedy and vindictive. I think I was honoring the only person who ever showed up for me without an invoice attached. But some nights, when the house creaks and the wind rattles the old windows, I lie awake wondering if I tore my family apart over wood and brick, or if they tore themselves apart long before this and I just finally refused to hold the pieces together. If you were in my shoes, if your grandmother spent your whole life promising you her house as your safe place, then changed her will after intense pressure from the very people who had the most to gain, and you later found a letter and video where she begged you not to let them steamroll you, would you have let your mother keep the house to keep the peace, even if it meant betraying your grandma's last clear wishes, or would you have gone to court against your own family like I did, knowing you might win the house but lose almost everyone who shared your blood?